Welcome to today's webinar. We'll wait just a minute or two as attendees move over from the waiting room. Great, I'm seeing that participants' numbers keeps on climbing. Good morning, afternoon, or evening from wherever you're calling in from. We're holding for just another few seconds as people are moving into the main room. All right, great. Let's begin. Welcome to today's webinar titled Readying Our Workforce for Building Back Better. My name is Marshall Bradshaw. I'm a member of the EIC staff, and before the session begins, I have some important housekeeping notes for you. This presentation is being recorded and will run approximately 60 minutes, including question and answer time at the end. The recording will be available on the EIC YouTube channel. All attendees watching live today will receive CEs, which will appear on your account within the next week. Attendees can listen to the webinar through their computers or by dialing in using the number and passcode provided by the Zoom software. We also welcome you to use the closed captioning function. Just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen and you will find the link to the live subtitles. If you have questions, you don't have to wait to the end of the presentation to submit them. We encourage you to submit your questions using the question and answer panel, which you can also find at the bottom of your screen. It's separate from the chat, but feel free to open the chat and say hello before entering your questions in the Q&A panel. We'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And now I'll hand it over to the Event Industry Council's Vice President of Sustainability and Industry Advancement, Mariella McElray.
Thank you, Marshall, and thank you to all of you for being here today. We represent, as a federation, over 30 organizations in the event sector, and this organization has really come together to tackle challenges that are pan-industry. And one of those challenges, of course, in the past year and a half has been, how do we address the challenges that arise from COVID-19? One of the things that I'm most proud of with our APEX COVID-19 Business Recovery Task Force has been a commitment to our workforce and to the wellness and well-being of the people that make up our industry. Today we have with us 4 incredible leaders that form part of our workforce and wellness task force within the COVID-19 Business Recovery Task Force. Amanda Armstrong, Cleo Battle, John Martinez, and Johnny White. And I am so inspired by their dedication to keeping this focus on the human aspect of our industry, making sure that as we come back, and we know that there will be ebbs and flows to the recovery, but that we always keep first and foremost in our minds the health and well-being of the people that we serve, including our workforce, the participants that attend our meetings, and all of the communities that we serve. So with that, I'll pass it over to Johnny White, our moderator for today, who will introduce the panel.
Thank you very much, Mariella, and I'm glad to be here. I've looked at the numbers. I think we have about over 760 people that have registered for the program, representing 30 different countries. So that's really good to hear that we have this many people on the session today to hear the topics that we're going to talk about today. And this is going to be a conversation. First of all, let me introduce myself. As Mariella said, I'm Johnny White. I'm the CEO for the American Society of Appraisers. But more than that, I've been involved in this industry in so many different levels, from participating in PCMA. I'm an adjunct faculty at multiple schools in the hospitality. So as I'm very passionate about this industry, and it's really good to see that it's starting to come back. But are we ready for that to come back? And that's what this conversation is going to be about. So I want to take a quick moment for the panelists just to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into this great conversation. So first of all, Cleo.
Good morning, everyone. I am excited to be here and always honored to speak to our industry. And like Johnny, I am 35 years in this industry. I am now President and CEO of Louisville Tourism. Certainly have lived in a lot of places in the country, and just continue to appreciate my fellow panelists and those others, a part of the EIC, who lean in to help make our industry better. So I'm glad to be with you all today and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Cleo. Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Armstrong here, Assistant Vice President with Enterprise Holdings over the Meetings and Travel Department globally. Again, like my esteemed panelist, I've been involved in the industry a long time, most recently as the past chair for the International Board of Directors for Meeting Professionals International. And I think I'm really hoping that you guys take some things away from this conversation about workforce and wellness, because I think we always say people first. But how do we actually live it, and how does that affect our peers, our family, and our community?
Thank you, Amanda. And John.
Hi, everybody. Namaste. My name is John Martinez. I'm the CEO and founder at an events technology company called ShopLogic. And we're passionate about simplifying the life of event organizers. So we produce solutions for membership-based organizations. I am personally passionate about the development of human potential. And I'm very lucky. I work with a team of we're about 80, close to 80, that spread around the world that I absolutely adore. I'm literally in love with each one of them in a very different way. And I spent I've been running ShopLogic since 1997. So it's, we're more than a teenager. We're a young 20-something. And before that, I was a meeting planner for the first 14 years of my life. And before that, I'm a quantum physicist, so I'm a proper nerd. And so that technology was always my passion. And then working for an AMC, Association Management Company, PCO, for the first 14 years of my career before I started ShopLogic. Then that set me for life for this industry. So trying to collaborate and contribute as much as I can.
Thank you very much, John. And you still look young, even though you put many, many years into the industry. So let's get into this conversation. So just let everyone know that I am actually in Austin, Texas. This last few weeks has been really great for me because I'm back on the road in a sense. I was in Savannah last week. I was in New Orleans on Monday. And now I'm in Austin. So I'm starting to see this normal. I'm seeing a lot of people starting to travel, which is great. But as we know, we're having issues here because as I talk to my colleagues, especially in the hotel and convention centers and so forth, even on my side, it's struggle for us now because we don't have as much of the resources that we did pre-pandemic. So, sort of one of the conversations I want to have with the group is, how do you communicate with your employees during this time? I mean, as you look at a GM at a hotel, they're not only being a GM, they're being housekeeper, front desk, and their salespeople are going out, cleaning beds and so forth. So they are stretched very thin. So as leaders, how do you help your employees? I mean, on the association side, we're doing in-person programs and virtual programs. And I don't necessarily have the funds to go and get a whole new staff to just do the virtual and then also do the in-person. They're doing both things. So they're stretched thin. So how do we communicate with these individuals during these tough times? And I'll start with you, Amanda.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think, we've heard it as leaders and as a community that I think in times of stress or crisis, you need to communicate very clearly and often. And I think the reason that's important is because it's reassuring to be in the know. I at least know from, hearing from our CEO, business updates, what's changing, where are we going? I think it helps reduce the anxiety. So I think if you go top down, depending on your level of leadership, either at work or even in your community or your family, are you having conversations often? Are you clear about what you know and what you don't know? And I think that's really important, especially during these, unprecedented times. We don't really know what the solution is for a lot of this, and we're kind of figuring it out as we go. And I think that's okay to say. And I think inviting people to that conversation to provide solutions That's where innovation comes from. And it's also where hopefully you're creating a safe space to share those solutions or those challenges or personal obstacles. So I don't think you can go wrong with communicating often, whether it's on a large scale, as a leader to your whole corporation, or if it's on a small scale. If you're if you manage 1 or 2 direct reports, make sure that you're making space for those conversations, because I think you'll find that as you investigate, you'll be able to learn more about what the other person is going through. And then you'll be able to share what you know and what you don't.
Right. And open communication is key, and frequent communication is key. John, what's your thoughts on communication during these times?
Yeah, very much in line with what Amanda has shared. What we have done is that we have embedded into the almost like the DNA of the company, into the processes, so it doesn't become an afterthought. And we have we really pay attention to the team. We one of our values is 360 degrees of care, and then what we put is like a compass with the team at the top, and we're quite bullish in the sense of what we say is that team first. I know most organizations, we've been trained to say customer first. I just don't think I would exist without my team. And so there would be no business, there would be no me, there would be no it. So we're quite forthcoming at that we will put our oxygen mask first, and then we're strong and we are grounded, and we have the basis to give together with our partners and suppliers to give the best possible service. So 360 degrees of care is one of those elements that we use. We have a weekly meeting in the company where, I understand in comparison to Chloe and Amanda, we are tiny, right? We're only 80 people spread all over the world. But all of us meet every Wednesday, 3:30 in the afternoon, UK time. We all meet online. We have a Zoom call where we run something that we call a Scrum. And during this Scrum, every team presents the highlights of the week to the whole company. And then within those highlights is a question, which is who would you like to recognize from the company and why? So there's open and public recognition. One member of the team will select one of our values and explain what this value means to him or to her. 3 members of the team will present their elevator pitches. And the elevator pitch, very much in line with Simon Sinek's Start With Why, should start with why. So it's creating that language of kindness and compassion. And this, we use it on a daily basis. And then at the end, we do all together a mindfulness breathing exercise that is led by a different team member every week. I know because of our size, we can get away with more, because when organizations are much bigger, it gets a lot harder. But something we realize that communicating is one thing, but we need also the communication back. And sometimes it's really hard for members of the team to ask for help when they need it. So we created a rota where everyone in the team has to see, one of the members of the team is a coach and a counselor. And even if this person wants to sit down for the hour and talk about nothing or whatever, talk about their holidays, they're free to do that. But everyone has to attend this in a rota. And therefore, we with this, we have removed the stigma of maybe asking question or not, because you have to have the session anyways. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to do from our tiny situation and point of view.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of good things for a small group. Good examples there. Cleo, from your perspective, and you're looking at, the answer I'm looking for you is from your perspective of the hospitality, the hotels, the convention centers, and so forth. How are they dealing with communicating? And they're going through a very tough time. I mean, a lot of these individuals, mid-level or lower, are not coming back. And so how are leadership helping these individuals that are there trying to do the work of 4 people rather than 1?
Yeah, I'll get to the hotel piece, but I did want to comment on something Amanda said about clear communication. And then John talked about making sure that communication goes both ways. One of the things I think we've learned during the past few months is that what's the difference between information and communication. And sometimes in organizations, we say, hey, we've provided this information, or you have this information here, you have this information there. And we've got to all be better as leaders to make sure we're communicating clearly information and not just providing it, but are we communicating it? And I think that's an important takeaway. The other thing I would say to both of my fellow panelists is one of the things I encourage from our team and their individual departments are one-on-ones. Too often when we come together for meetings, we come together with an agenda. Even if it's a one-on-one, you're coming together with an agenda. And I really believe we've learned during this period of time, have a one-on-one with your person. Take 15 minutes to talk about whatever you need to talk about as a leader, but give that person 15 minutes, talk about their families, talk about what's stressing them out in the office. We need these one-on-one times with our people to really understand what they're going through right now, because we are asking them to do a lot more than they were doing before. And we don't always understand all the other stressors in their life. To your question about hotels and our facilities, you're absolutely right, Johnny. We've got hoteliers, GMs in this city that are they're working in housekeeping, they're working in the restaurant. And, the one thing that I've heard from them as their staffs have been shrunk, what I hear from them is that they have taken a lot of opportunities to be transparent with their staffs and to talk about what's going on with them as they're working with their fellow folks in housekeeping, talking about what's going on in their own life around COVID or around social justice. And it's helped to bring their staffs closer together. It helps to create a better bond when the general manager or the executive director are facing some of the same challenges as we're sitting there, we're making beds together, or we are in the kitchen making omelets together. So I think you're seeing a lot more transparency from our leaders, our GMs, as they're they want to be a part of the team. And so I think if there's one theme I've seen, Johnny, with some of our facility partners, it's transparency and rolling up the sleeves right there with their fellow staff folks.
And Johnny, can I add to that? I think being part of kind of the travel and tourism industry as enterprise rent-a-car, that's so key, Leo, is the transparency with leaders. And I want to really highlight this for all of us, is this is a shift. I mean, I'm old enough to remember that, there was a line that you didn't really cross about sharing your personal stuff, right? I mean, It was one of those things that it's like, don't ask too many questions, you don't, need to pry. This is not one of those times. We are shifting now into transparency and really recognizing the whole person. Their work and their life and their family are part of that whole person. And I think as a leader, they don't know what's appropriate to share until you do. So if you're talking about your struggles with COVID or what you're afraid is going to happen next quarter or the Delta variant, whatever it is, I think it really opens the door to a two-way transparent conversation about life. And to me, that is one of the things we'll get to on being an empathetic leader. But I think that's where the conversation gets real. And that's, I think, where there can really be a safe space for you to share and get to know, people, because it's people first. And I think that's how you do it is two-way transparency.
Right. Yeah, and you, a couple of tips there. You want to create a trusted space. So some of the things that I've done throughout my career is I've always been a leader that communicated with my staff and on an individual level too. I mean, one of the things that I used to do when I was running the organization in New York, every Friday I would take an employee out for pizza. And I had this great pizza shop that was down on the corner that I loved. And I would select randomly one of my employees, and I had a staff of about 40. And we would just go down and sit and have pizza. There was no agenda. We just sat there, and I'd say, you could talk about anything you want to talk about, and I'll, share whatever, I will talk about. And they talked about everything from family to what's going on at work and those sort of things. So keeping that in mind, as we got into this pandemic, I said, I still want to continue doing that. And so what I do is, I've always had one-on-ones with my direct reports. And that would happen on a weekly basis, but I was randomly calling my staff. And I will say that a number of them didn't answer my phone call because they thought I was a robocaller because they never, got my number come up on their phone before. And when they answered, they were a little taken back, like the CEO's calling, oh no, we're about to lay off. I said, no, this is nothing related to that. I'm just checking in to see how you're doing. And I can tell you that I received such great feedback because it was like, it felt like, the organization cared. There was, we weren't talking about work. I was asking what's going on with the family and that sort of thing. So that transparency helps when you're communicating and creating that trusted space. I think there was a question that came up is, how do you convince employees to open up or speak up? And some folks, some folks have been burned before speaking their mind and feel that they can't be trusted. That's again, if you create that trusted space, then they're not going to feel that they are burned. I do want to get to one question here that I saw that's kind of related to this. And so the question is, what tools are being used to see how employees are feeling about their world of work if they necessarily don't feel psychologically safe to have conversations face to face? So what are we doing with the tools that we have in place? And I'm going to go with you, John. I mean, you talked a little bit about this, but any more details you can give related to the tools that you can use to make people feel in this time?
Yeah, these sessions with the coach, counselor, are confidential, and they're between them, and it is part of the culture of the company that this is a very sacred space in a way. What we also are doing is that we're doing 360 degrees assessments, also anonymous, so we can really hear what's going on and what's underneath. What we find is that specifically with people who are of trait excessively agreeable, people that actually they're great to have around because they sort of they're open to everything and they're so involved and connected. But what happens sometimes is that that same agreeableness, what happens is that you need to be listening to the request they haven't made. Almost you have to be listening between the lines in order what happens. So how to train also my leadership team to be aware of these things and how to keep the radar open enough so we can be getting, because right now, a lot of people are not sitting in the same office. I mean, in the US, I was recently in Miami and it blew my mind on how open everything was. But I'm in London and we just opened up and there's a bit of a pushback to that. But in the rest of Europe, I mean, it isn't the same. A lot of people are not sitting together. So you don't get the physical nuances that comes from every day, from looking, not talking to somebody, but see them walking in, right, with the shoulders drop and etc. How do we get this? How do we inform ourselves in this new environment of communication? Luckily, we had been doing our online meetings for about 5 years before the pandemic. So we really had the chance through this last 5 years to embed into the processes enough of the qualities needed and the etiquette, that's the word I was looking for, needed in order to be able to communicate effectively, and for team leaders also to communicate as Cleo was saying, both ways, up and down. So this is some of the stuff that we're doing, and also is we're putting so much out there about dealing with situations with compassion, care, and kindness. One of our values is be kinder than necessary, because everyone that we come across is fighting its own battle. So, and all of our values are a little bit quirky like that. They're like sentences and they're phrases, because I remember when I was working for other companies, and somebody would say, yeah, one of our values is transparency. And sometimes as a young person, I had a bit of a hard time trying to translate that into action. How do I do that? And how do I live that thing? So I feel that also what happens with the leadership team is that once you create a set of values, you become accountable, to behave also that way. So, and that helps trickle down the sense or I guess the love.
Right, the love. I like the statement that compassion, care, and kindness. That's a really good model to have for the organization. So, during this time, it's a requirement to have, or you should have some empathy. Empathetic leaders is key during these times. Cleo, let's first start there. I mean, what makes an empathetic leader, especially during these times?
Sure, and I think Amanda really doubled down on the transparency piece, and I think you want to be transparent. You want to be a great listener, and again, all of us are individual leaders, but even your vice presidents and your directors. I mean, these are important skills that all of those folks have got to take on in their roles. I had a boss a few years back who every Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving, we'd come back and he would always give the speech and say, take an extra breath when someone says something to you before you react, because this time of year is very stressful for many people for a lot of different reasons. And I've never forgotten that, because he said it every year that I worked there. But when you think about the world we're in now, it's almost the same thing. We don't understand everything that everyone's going through right now. I'll give you an example. We have, and a lot of companies in our space, and I know other hospitality companies have EAPs, which are employee assistance programs. And these programs are complementary to your staffs. They're confidential, and they go through, stress management, anger management, family issues, crises, things that you just need to talk to someone about that you might be going through. And one of the things I did, during when we were, in the spring of COVID of last year, is that I made sure that I told people I used the EAP for a family situation that I had. And I think that helps people to understand, again, you're communicating that it's okay. To Amanda's point, you're letting people know it's okay for you to use the EAP and to trust EAP with your needs. It also helps, again, to be an empathetic leader. People will, can identify with the fact that you had an issue, you used the EAP. So I just think those things are important. I certainly have had a lot of conversations with folks regarding the social justice that have happened, and I've been very honest about my experiences, and I think it helps people through that. So that's, to me as a leader, those are the kinds of things. And again, I think we're just all doubling down on being transparent, but I do think that's very important in this space, right? Especially right now.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, and you openly, told 700 people that you used the EAP. I mean, that's huge, because there was a time, again, as Amanda said, before the pandemic, we weren't opening up about these type of things. I mean, and even, and this is off topic, but you see athletes now, they're talking about the stress that they have, and we're accepting it. And I think that is also can happen, within our industry. If you're stressed out, talk about it. And that what helps stress. Amanda, any other tips you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, both, John and Cleo have really, I think they've captured it well, mostly because I feel like I want to define it. I mean, for me, empathetic leader, I mean, what is it? I mean, it's you care about this person, not as an employee, not as a peer, but as a human being. And so what do you do for people that you care about? I think you make time for them, you actively listen, and you share what you feel comfortable sharing to help create that safe space. And to me, that's empathy right there, whether it's at work or it's home, but trying to channel that. And I think right now it is so critical that we use that characteristic that I think we all have but use it in different ways, maybe things that are outside of our comfort zone, especially in a work environment, because look at what we've been through in the last 18 months between the injustice, between the job loss, death and illness, working from home, schooling your kids at home. I mean, you talk about the curveballs that anybody in your world has experienced. Now's the time that they need an empathetic shoulder, whether you're their boss, their peer, or a family member. So I just think that in this time, and I think that's why I was so happy to be on this panel, is talking about wellness. Is we all play a part in that. And I think we're trying to create a community that is more empathetic, and hopefully fosters more unity, at the end of the day, not just about performance, but, I think what John was speaking to is because you care about the world, you care about your work, you care about your community. So, I do think, what they've said about having time for one-on-ones and really actively listening and opening up are really good best practices for empathetic leadership.
So I want to raise this question. Oh, go ahead, John.
Jenny, I just wanted to reiterate some of the stuff. And, I belong to some CEO forums, right, where we try to share and discuss what's going on. And when I explained the way that we were doing things, one of the comments that I got was, why would you want to open that kind of worms, right? Why would I want to offer assistance to my team so that they could deal with the personal problems through a resource that is offered by the company? So if it is not a professional problem, why would you get involved? Mm. The thing is that I was never able to leave the person at the door and come into the office as a professional, let's say, right? It's one of the terms that we use. If my sister had been diagnosed with cancer, I would be suffering that. And if I had an issue with my partner or my son was going through it, I will be suffering that. I'm carrying this stuff with me. We tend to compartmentalize. We try to put it aside and put a brave face. But I was never able to do that myself. So how could I ask of anyone to do that in my organization and the organization that I'm leading? So I make it very open that I also see the counselor. It is on the schedule. I also see the counselor and the coach. Actually, I work with my son. I have the joy of working with my son for the last 11 years. And anyone that has worked with a son, it's a dance, right? It's a rich dance where sometimes we're in perfect harmony and sometimes we stepping on each other's toes and sometimes we just don't want to dance with each other. And this counselor coach sees us together almost like couples therapy in order for us to be able to communicate better, because I absolutely adore him and I want to be able to find a way for me to communicate better and for him to communicate better with me. And the same thing for the rest of the company. I feel that if we don't, it make business sense to take care of our people. It just makes business sense. It's just people motivated, the people wanting to do what they do. And what we look for is to create space where people want to come to work, and where people will be able to open up and be vulnerable and I have to start. It has to start by me modeling this, by me saying, hey guys, I'm scared about this, or I've been having this kind of issues, and then openly there to the rest of the team said, hey, yet I am vulnerable, yet I'm solid. I'm here. I'm not backing away. I'm looking for help, and I'm facing this in the most authentic way I can face it. So that is from my personal perspective. That's how we live it
right.
In this case.
Well, you bring up a good point, and a question came up related to this. I mean, you're mixing, personal and professional. Is there a boundary between the two now? I mean, is it at a point where it's all meshed together, or are there boundaries there?
Well, my answer to that is that there is a harmony. I think that's what we're looking for in the team, because I love my job. I can't get up early enough in the morning to start working, and I'm wondering sometimes if I'm a poet and I'm walking down the beach hand by hand with my partner and I'm looking at the sunset, that inspiration that's going to take into my next big thing or my next poem, was I working or was I living? Where are the lines between this? And then, of course, I'm very aware also that the same way that it can also be pernicious. It can also be that we're putting too much pressure on ourselves, that we are not stopping early enough with work in order to dedicate to the other areas of our lives, because we are best when we're integrated, right? When all the uses that exist as a son, as a mother, as a professional, as a lover, as a basketball player, as all of these things living in harmony and integrated. So what we have tried to do is try to embed this sort of philosophies, if we can put it in any ways, or culture, it's more culture, into the DNA of the culture of the company.
Right.
And we meditate all together.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
The teams do a mindfulness breathing exercise, for example, trying to bring tools in order how to deal with, with all the difficulties of life and the day.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to come to you, Amanda, and I want to first say this. I mean, John, you did a great job there describing this harmony. But I don't think a lot of people are like you. You are unique, and you know how to put the two together and have this harmony. But there are individuals that have this challenge of trying to do that. I mean, and especially during this time where, individuals have multiple hats, from working these jobs, as I described before, where they're doing multiple things. And then they have all the stuff at home, from now being a teacher because their kids are, at home rather than in school and so forth. So that harmony is hard to manage. Amanda, I'd love for you to talk to that. And I guess one of the things, is there any resource groups that, your organization has developed, or you've seen other organizations have to help with this harmony that John talks about?
Absolutely. So, and we've got some in the chat here. Costanza's talking about her 3,000 plus organization. Costanza also come from mine. Ours is 80,000. And so I think that, idealistically, I love what John's saying, and you want to be able to scale that. But no, we have to have big, hairy, goals. And so how do you do that? And I think you just start what you can control. And I think we had some comments too about having some not empathetic leaders, and it doesn't look like they're leaning that way. So what do you do with that? So you can only control what you can control. And I look at it as, what's the circle of influence that you have? Whether it's peers or team, you might not manage anybody. Then it's yourself and your world outlook and your attitude. And so what can you do? And I think that, to me, there's always probably somebody on your team, as far as going back to empathy, that's probably not your favorite, right? There's always somebody. I mean, let's get real. So what can you do? How can you connect with that person? How can you stretch yourself to be like, I got to find something in common? Like, just start small. With whatever circle you have to influence. And I think, as it relates to, employee resource groups, we have a lot of those at Enterprise. And I think that those are really important. That's your tribe. What are you interested in? Is it a social group? Is it a cause? Is it like-minded people? What is, do you have any employee resource groups at your large companies that you can get involved in? Maybe you're passionate about the injustice that's going on and you want to get involved there around mentorship and minorities or female leaders. Maybe it's sustainability is your thing. Maybe you just need a support group of working parents. But I think in larger organizations like ours, we've really tried to create these little tribes of people to be smaller communities than the big one. And maybe implement some of the things that John's doing at his company, building that trust, meditating together. I mean, that sounds amazing. So, but I think you got to start, in a small, in my perspective, start with a small group to build that trust. And I think as far as tools, I do want to support, what Cleo said is about sharing your story with the AP. And also we get a lot of emails from benefits. And we don't always read them. So for me, as a leader, bringing those resources into our weekly meeting to be like, did you see we have free counseling? I mean, could we all use a little counseling? I mean, so just make sure that you're emphasizing and amplifying some of the services that maybe your large companies have, including ERGs and EAPA. I think those things are important to make sure that it's okay to join, it's okay to talk about, only if you feel comfortable sharing.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about wellness in a way of how can leadership be more flexible during these times? Is anyone doing anything different with their schedule, with the amount of hours employees are working, or when they coming in, or are they even coming in? Are you having them work virtually? I know, John, you talked about a lot of your groups are virtual. Even to the extent, are we giving additional vacation time for individuals? Cleo, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I think we are. It's so interesting that, I always say we're in an industry where you look to your left, you look to your right, and if everyone's going that direction, okay, I must be going the right direction. And if there's anything we've learned in the last few months, there's no one on the left, no one on the right. Everyone's going a lot of different directions, and so you're having to really figure this out. I think we brought together a staff group, and we had a leadership group, and we have outside HR. And we had our outside HR facilitate a conversation between the two groups to figure out how we're going to come back to work and the kind of flexibilities we want to have. I think we feel good about the moment that we're in right now. If you ask me this question in October, I may tell you something very different. But we've gone to a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office. Tuesday and Friday, you can work from home if you want to work from home. We've looked at that from the perspective of just education and commuter times and things like that. We were already, prior to the pandemic, we were already doing some hours where you can shift your hours roughly from 7 o'clock to about 10 o'clock in terms of how that might work with your personal life. So we've done some of that. We yet have not changed much as it relates to our vacation time at this point. But something I think we made a commitment that once we went through this process with our HR person, we would stick with this till about October. And then we'll do an employee survey. We'll take a look and see where we're at. And then decide, what new directions or what other tweaks we may need to make in terms of our working environment.
And that's good that you're going to do an assessment to get feedback from your employees. So doing surveys is good. One point I will make, so with my organization, I know, during the pandemic, people just didn't have the time to take vacation. So, we're on a fiscal year. So our fiscal year ends June 30th. So I extended an additional week as we went into the new year. So they were able to carry over some time because, again, I felt bad for a lot of employees. A, they couldn't travel because of what was going on, and B, we're just so busy, so they couldn't even take out the time. So I'm hoping a lot of other organizations are doing the same thing there. John, anything that you're doing from a flexible standpoint for your staff?
I think if maybe it's the nature of what we do, or it's how we have designed the company from early on, as we're spread all over the world. So last year we were already experiencing things like we have team members in Korea, and we have team members in Latin America and places like Venezuela, for example, where the situation is so different. And so we needed to find somehow also time zones. So how do we bring this harmony that we've been talking about in order to be able to cater for the needs of all these individuals with the different realities? In Australia, they were already having face-to-face event in November last year because of the policies that they took. So if there were Australian events, you already had the possibility to meet face-to-face. The same thing in Korea, but of course it wasn't the same in London, where I'm based, or in the rest of Europe. And Latin America and the US was also experiencing a different, was having a different experience. So how do we actually take all of those elements into consideration? So luckily, because of the nature of how the company functions, again, putting on making sure that the processes already, so it's not an afterthought. So taking care of our people and doing these reviews is not just something that is happening, because we see something going wrong, but it's there from the beginning. So, for example, we wanted to give tools to every individual to deal with with the self. And we really believe in kindness, but we also believe that kindness starts here. That this is African adagio that says, be wary of a naked man that offers you a shirt, right? And so if there's no kindness going this way, it's very hard for kindness to be going the other way. So we have adapted to the needs of many of the staff members. Some people couldn't go anywhere, they just were not allowed to go, even if you wanted to go away, even if we gave them the time. Somebody in London couldn't travel. So what we did is that we started to create flexible environments, and flexible working times, so they could adapt. Luckily, because we have people in so many time zones, somebody could say, okay, I'm going to take that one, and didn't really disrupt the productivity, if we can put it in any way, because at the end of the line, we have to be able to pay salaries. I mean, we're a small company. So what we have done is that we have taken we have made sure that this becomes an element of what we do every day. So at the same time, the leaders within my teams are able to hold on to that and use that as a base in order to move forward, and then know what these boundaries are between professional and person, and what is personal and what is not, and when are you being kind or not, et cetera. So in order to create those frameworks that allows us to then play inside and feel free.
Right. Okay. And Amanda, any other, like at Enterprise, such a large company, what are they doing that we can learn from for reference to flexibility?
Absolutely. And I'll be quick with my answer, because I feel like we kind of have two subgroups, at Enterprise. We have the field, which the doors are open, right, for travel. And those folks are working hard, long hours. And there's lots of folks in the chat that we're hearing from that are going through just that. And so I think, they don't have an option to work from home. And I think that's really important for us to be looking at this big picture. Is there are a lot of frontliner employees that they got to be there, and that's tough. It is tough to get there in a pandemic. It's tough to be customer facing in a pandemic, and it's tough on you, health wise. So I think that is a piece where when we look at flexibility, there are limits for us by certain positions, but I don't think that there's a limit on listening to your employees and what they need, and being wary of burnout, being wary of attrition. Retention is really important to us. So we are asking people to do more, but are we giving them enough time off? Are we paying attention that they're taking their time off? Because that's a manager's responsibility. And so, so that's something on the field. Now, on the positions that can work remote, I'm really proud of Enterprise because they've been doing a lot of surveys just like Cleo's done. We've engaged Gallup, and it's more about employee engagement, and the part on where you work, when you work, and how you work is in there. But there's a lot of other things in there too. Do you feel valued? Do you feel recognized? Do you feel like you have enough information and the equipment you need to do your job? There's a lot of questions. We get those as leaders, and we are held accountable for those results and to see them going in a good direction. And they've given us resources on how do we coach in the areas that we need. But I think from working remote, we're all connecting in a different way. And what Cleo said was evaluating where you are. And then in 6 months, how are we doing? What's gone up? What's gone down? What do we need to tweak? And we're doing that. We have not opened our corporate headquarters in St. Louis because of the conditions there. And we won't until the end of September. And when we do, it'll be a small phase back group. And then also it was an opt-in based off of departments. those department heads decided how often they needed to see their people, and it wasn't all equal. I mean, accounting can do a lot of their job from home, and if they need to or want to, let's make that open for them. So we're just adjusting, Johnny. I guess the best way to say it is we're taking 2 steps forward and evaluating because we do want to offer flexibility to those that can work remote.
Right, and that's key, providing that flexibility. So I'm seeing some other questions here that I do want to address. I know there's a number of people who have talked about the struggle they're having in getting back in the industry. As I'm seeing here, some of the comments and questions, I'm applying to all these jobs, I'm not hearing back. My advice to you, and then I'd love for the panelists to give any advice here too, is to network. First of all, try to build your network. I think a lot of people will say, the best job they got was through a colleague of theirs because that colleague was able to recommend them. So increase your networking, continue to network. I mean, I think right now in this virtual world, LinkedIn is probably the number one or one of the number one places to connect with people. But as we start to get back in person, go to activities, MPI, PCMA, all these little chapter events, continue to attend these programs, continue to build your network because they are going to help you find that job. Now, it's tough. I know a lot of organizations are not ready to bring back staff, or the staff that they're bringing back may not necessarily be, unfortunately, that senior person that's been in a position for like 25 years, and they may not see the benefits of bringing that person back, but continue to be strong in your efforts here, because at some point you will get back in the industry. That's what I would give you as a tip here. Anybody else on the panelists want to give any advice to those that are struggling right now when it comes down to trying to find a job? Amanda.
Yes, volunteer. I know that this sounds like maybe something that you can't add to your already full plate, but it pays you back in spades. And I always talk about the give, but it's really the get back. And so what do you get through volunteerism? Well, altruistically, you're doing a great thing for your community or the organization that Johnny mentioned. There's lots of them, but you actually get to demonstrate your skills. So by someone knowing your name or being linked on LinkedIn with them, they don't know you and what you're capable of doing until they see it. And so in a volunteer role, whether you're going on a limb and you're doing some marketing, or you're managing maybe a membership drive, or maybe you're volunteering to put on an MPI or a PCMA event, they see your skills come to life and they remember that. So you become a little bit more of a go-to, and you prove that you're a subject matter expert. And I hear you, Eileen, you're wanting to get back out there. I would say there's so many organizations that could use your expertise. And I think to speak to Johnny's point, it's a great way to not just build your network, but keep your skills sharp and showcase the ones that you have.
Hey, Johnny, the only thing that I'd really add to what you and Amanda have said is, I've talked to some of my peers, and I think everyone, you're beginning to, and I think, Johnny, you mentioned this about, you're starting to restructure the organization, and you're thinking differently and looking at job descriptions and are we going to do this job in the future? Are we not going to do this job? I guess one of the things that I guess I would suggest to someone that's looking for an opportunity is some of those more unique things you've done in your career. Maybe it's something you did for 2 or 3 months. Might be something you want to try to include in your resume and part of the conversation, because I think a lot of organizations are looking to really shift some of the things they're doing. And you're looking for individuals who've had some unique experiences, and not just those experiences that we've always done and those job descriptions that we've always done. So that'd probably be the only thing that I think I would add to what Amanda and Johnny have said about trying to find a job. I think what Amanda said about volunteering is a fantastic recommendation, and networking as well, to Johnny's point.
Absolutely. And John, any other things you want to add on?
Yeah, I think that Cleo and Amanda have really expressed it well. We realize that the more I know, the more I realize that I know very little, right? And so also my understanding of there's so many angles to what people have been living through the pandemic in so many different areas of the world. Some people, for some people, the pandemic brought them closer to their loved ones, and then you ask some people, say, well, this is the best thing that could have happened to my marriage or in my relationship with my kids, et cetera, et cetera. And you have some others really, really struggling with the isolation. So so what we have tried to do is try to create the spaces for this conversation to be had. And then, we were lucky enough as a small company to grow during the pandemic because we shifted and we pivoted our services towards virtual events, and that created an opening. Otherwise, we would have been out of business. So and at that point, we were looking for people, and we were looking for, we employed quite a few people during 2020, and the team. Sorry for that, guys. The meetings are happening anyways, even if I'm talking to you. So what we did is that we were looking for totally different skill set. So we used to hire event organizers and tech people, but now we needed people that knew about video and audio. So we were exploring different areas. So I think that what Cleo and Amanda said is totally correct. Volunteering is an amazing way of saying, hey, here I am. And at the same time, I understand that many people need to get paid because they have responsibilities and rents and mortgages and et cetera, et cetera. So, for how long do you volunteer and how do you approach that subject, I guess is daunting for everybody.
Right. Well,
Johnny, there's one question I'd love to answer from an anonymous attendee about the increase of conversations about vacation time and paid time off. And from a large corporate standpoint, we are doing that. We've offered an additional day for everyone to volunteer in their communities because we really feel like to answer the injustice that's happened, we want people to get involved where their passion project is. We've also extended vacation, just to Johnny's point, where you weren't able to take it, you're not going to lose it. And then we've also given time off to get vaccines for those that are willing to get them. And it is a full day for each one. And if you have an adverse reaction, it's increased choice time or sick leave if you do have a reaction. So that is something that the vacation paid time off hasn't changed in enterprise in a long time. And so I'm happy to say that we are trying to shift to accommodate.
Right. Well, that is good. And I'm hoping a number of you that are listening are taking notes on these type of things. As this is what being open, empathetic leaders do is understanding the needs of their employees and doing stuff that's going to help them throughout that. So we're at the end of our discussion here. I want to really thank Cleo, John, and Amanda for being here. I think we had a great conversation. The conversation doesn't stop here. We're going to continue these type of webinars throughout the year where we're talking about the workforce and the wellness, because it's going to change. Right now, what we see today is going to be very different in probably 2 weeks because this Delta is coming out and things are going to have to, switch again. So we'll continue this conversation here. With that said, again, I want to thank all the panelists and I thank all of you for being here. Now to Mariella, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. One of the key things that I've pulled away from today is just the importance of being kinder than necessary. I love that idea, the importance of empathy, and also the idea that in showing your vulnerability, you give strength to others. And I think that those are really powerful takeaways. So thank you all so much. In terms of the continuing education credits, they will be uploaded within a week, provided that your email address on file matches, the one that you used to register matches the one that we have in our database. This webinar is also eligible for CAE credits that you can self-report. We have a couple of other programs to tell you about as well. If you are looking to increase your skills, we have our Certified Meeting Professional program. You can go onto our website at eventscouncil.org to learn more about that. And we've also introduced a Sustainable Event Professional certificate, which is available as well. I'll pause here on this slide for a second. This is the output from our COVID-19 Business Recovery Task Force in the past year and a half. And one of those areas is a career center. If you go to our website, you can go to the Career Center and you will find lots of different job postings. Take a look at the Workforce and Wellness Guide. Within that, you'll find a listing of all of the member organizations' job boards, as well as lists of scholarships and other opportunities for you that you can go and apply for programs to upskill and reskill as you need to. I think we've got another slide or two. Yeah, so if you're looking for some more education, we have lots of on-demand content on our website. And just remember to always go back and update your profile just so that we have the best way of communicating with you. You'll see we've got our program for our Sustainable Event Professional Certificate. It's a 16-module course that gives you about half the credits that you need in order to achieve your CMP requirements. And you do receive a digital badge as well that you can use on your social media profiles. And I think with that, we will conclude. Thank you again, John, Johnny, Amanda, and Cleo for this incredible hour together and all of your wonderful insights. Thank you.
Mariela, I wanted to ask you if it was possible to share it. We did an wellness ebook, and then a little document on working from home, not as easy as we thought. Which could be quite helpful from for a lot of the audience.
Absolutely, we will definitely share those out. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.